Hi, welcome to HeadTalks, a podcast from Headforwards. I'm your host, Owen Hodge. I'm joined today by Senior Product Manager at Form3, Chris Fayers. Chris is actually a Headforwards alumni. Welcome back, Chris. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Very welcome. It's a pleasure to be back in the Fibre Hub. It's an amazing building, and it's great to be back here drinking the coffee in the cafe.
Yeah, exactly. Rude not to try a sample of coffee whilst you're here. Great. So we're going to talk today about DevOps, basically, and we'll wander around that topic and see where it takes us. I remember when you were here at Headforwards, that was very much a big part of what you were doing and seemed to be doing some really cool stuff. I hear it spoken about a lot. I'm not an expert in it whatsoever, so hoping to learn a little bit today. For my benefit, for everyone else's benefit, could you just give us an overview of what is DevOps when people mention it in the agile software development-y kind of?
Yeah. So I think if you take agile to be a mindset, and I think you take DevOps to be a series of capabilities that you develop within your organization from development into operational of technology. So it may be a piece of software you're developing, or it may be a service you're delivering, or how you take changes in your functional software, the business software that you use.
Yeah.
And how that's treated within the organisation. And I think if you take those capabilities into four key areas, into the technology you use and how you do it, thinking about source control, version control, testing, and all the continuous delivery, continuous integration. Most importantly, it's cultural. It is a change in mindset. There are things that you need to unlearn, things that you need to learn to do. You need to support. The wider organisation needs to understand the value that you bring to a product through being able to be agile with a small a rather than a capital A. It's very much about measuring and monitoring what you do. So feedback from your end users, bringing that really early into your development cycles, measuring that, monitoring the performance of the application, either through infrastructure or through the SLAs that your software might need to conform to, depending on the domain you're working in. And of course, management and process is important too. So certainly within larger enterprise organizations that might be using ITIL libraries to manage change and also work, making sure that you've got visibility of flow. Lean is still very much an important part of any DevSecOps or SecDevOps organization. So having the visibility of flow, limited work in progress, showing the value that it's adding to your organization.
Cool, that's great. That's a really good comprehensive oversight. So I guess another quite broad question, which is how if you're an existing organization that isn't using DevOps, and maybe you're a large organization as well with quite a complex IT estate, sensitive data and all that kind of stuff that organizations are rightly concerned about. How do you start that shift to becoming DevOps or doing DevOps or whatever the right way to say that is?
So if you sort of take the four capabilities, and you're never going to implement wholesale change in one go. I mean, most importantly, as an enterprise organization, you've still got to continue to deliver what you currently do. So your cadence for product delivery, development, adoption of new ideas, strategy, the way your organization is structured isn't going to change overnight. You need to take people on that journey with you. But certainly, if you take the core of the technical aspects, the cultural changes come, but over a longer period. But those technical changes, focusing on small wins is always key. So wherever you find yourself making manual changes or to a configuration item, to either an application that you're running, it might be a SaaS product, or a configuration of a VM if you're still running applications on top of machines, or configuration of a cloud element, whether that be something like a machine image, or something like an application gateway, or any of the sort of the platform services that you might be consuming. So looking to have a declarative state of those environments is repeatability. There's a lot of talk of abilities. I found myself talking a lot about the abilities when working with teams that are either adopting DevOps or continuing on that journey. But learning should be continuous as part of your organization. You never stop learning. You always reflect on what you've done, either in the short term or the long term. But sort of the state of the cloud environments, the abilities that they offer you to be able to control configuration, to control scale, to control security, to control the level of audit, all there as a service for you. Taking that step to make sure your environment is repeatable, is key, and that's one of the sort of the first steps.
Yeah. Similar to an agile transformation, I guess it's part of an agile transformation in a lot of ways. But you've said the word culture a few times there, and that is quite key, I imagine. So before you even start getting into the technology side of things, there's possibly a cultural reset. So again, especially if you're in an organization which has been doing something in a certain way for a period of time, overcoming those kind of barriers. I mean, how do you see bridging the different people or roles within a team to kind of come together and start to design what the new world looks like?
Yeah. I mean, you touched on the start of you mentioned DevOps and threw in security as well. And security is always a key part of that. And even as early back as 2015, the idea of bringing security into that pipeline for DevSecOps and shifting it as far left as you can. In fact, many people like to think about security first. SecDevOps becomes important, an important part of that process. I mean, if your service is an API, for example, it's, if you just want to get a list of items or an item, an object through a RESTful transfer, it's natural for developers to want to return you the entire object of data. Why should we worry about that? But actually, if you put security first as part of that initial product design, so well, actually, what do you need to see? How do you start that? How do you make that request secure to start with? So beyond all the other things that you worry about is what do you actually want to explore? Build roles into the service or the interface that's requesting the API. So there are many roles within a large organization, and they tend to be quite narrow. In traditional setups, people will have a role and responsibility, and what can tend to happen, and it's natural, I think it's very much human behavior, is that you become comfortable in a role. You have a team, you have a department, and you're proud of what you achieved. You've got your turf almost. I think is the way to look at it. And operations teams will have that. They will have systems they like, systems they're comfortable using, systems they know well. So they will want to continue in that vein, and developers again will want to be creative and want to explore and want to test new things and be able, use the latest toys and tools. I mean, that's just a given.
Exactly.
It's something new and shiny. You've lost people down rabbit holes for weeks. So that cultural shift of breaking down those barriers. I mean, to go from organisations that can be highly bureaucratic to more generalist organisations takes time, and part of that is building trust. If part of the question is about how you organise teams around that's it can be complex, and I've seen several different patterns used. Certainly, when you bring security into a DevOps team, do you want to embed a security expert within one team that may be developing a particular feature or looking after a particular platform, or is there a team that you go to and consult with, or will come and consult with you, or even worse, that you will put stuff to probably too late for them to review? Say, oh no, you can't do that, and that's a problem. And I always end up painting security as a negative influence, but actually it's really important, and it's not at all. I mean, sometimes I think organisations feel that the first we go with zero trust for networking in design, in application design and communication, but then is the security principle that the first answer should always be no. Justify what you want to do, and it's not a bad mindset. It's good to play the red team sometimes. So what do I actually need to do this? Am I over? Are we over designing? Are we overreaching? What's lean? What do we actually need to do?
No, that's great. So we've touched on there some of the barriers you might come up against, and sort of how to sort of work past them.
Yeah.
What does the sort of change process look like in a DevOps environment, where you referenced it there, where rather than what we want to avoid is team has developed something and then and now we want to release this, so now it's gone for review with security or other teams within the organization that have a part to play and wear a hat to make sure that what we're putting out there is safe, secure, and everything like that. But do you bring people earlier on into the design conversations? Like, so what I've seen in some places is where, here's our change, now go and read all our documentation about this change and see if you've got a problem with it, rather than maybe bring them a bit closer as part of the design stage.
Yeah, but very, very, very much so.
Yeah.
So we've touched on security there, and let's put the DevOps, the singular hat back on with the mindset out there. Actually, one of the key things you want to do with both your development and your infrastructure as code at this point. I don't think that there's many organizations that would call themselves DevOps organizations that aren't using Git and GitHub and the tools like Terraform to help control and orchestrate the environments in which they operate. So everything's defined as code, but automation is key to all of that. So the more you bring in earlier on in the development phase, and the more repeatable elements of that continuous delivery pipeline that you build has, it is vital. So we touch on change, and change management is a really interesting one. It's something that there's for me, I think it's become easy to say there are two types of change. You have product changes, where you're going to be interacting with clients. You might be developing something that's specific for a client, or it might be generalized, it might be an update of a feature. And you have technical changes, where actually it's the developers and the platform engineers have chosen the way they've implemented something, and actually they can leave the interface as it is, so other systems that interact, I'm sure we'll come on to architecture at some point, but how those systems interact would allow them to hollow out the service and re-implement it however they like, so that although it may be a higher risk change, it can still be a standard change in respect there's no impact to service. And that's when we go on to the monitoring of the metrics, so you can see that in real time. You can you're building automated tests as part of your pipeline that will take your releasable artifact. It might be a great way to do DevOps is with containers and encapsulation in that respect. So you have a releasable artifact, you can test that in many ways. Your unit tests, your integration tests, smoke tests, certainly security as well, security scanning of those artifacts. Even that's after development. But again, security at the start. You can also look at load testing in those environments as well. And we always wondered how many environments you need to do agile development, DevOps, whatever it is, and it seems we seem to settle around 3. We end up with developer machines instances, whether that be virtual on the box, something that's an environment that you can spin up and control yourself, but certainly something that's for testing of the systems, then certainly an integration environment as alongside production. So you've got the ability to push releasable items through
different environments.
Very, very quickly. Having a well-defined process, which is short and has the people involved that need to know, is key. So whether that's communicating change to clients or communicating change to other technical teams, I think it's worth saying that actually an evolution of DevOps is platform engineering teams. I see it very much with the really technologically advanced engineering groups that are developing platform services. So moving that life cycle of cloud is going from infrastructure as a service to platform as a service, SaaS providers, but actually developing industry specific platform services. They're very much have a team which helps enable sec DevOps by looking after tooling, by looking after a standard platform, a way that everything can interact.
Are there any kind of flagship organizations out there that they've nailed it, and the ones that everyone's aiming for, like any early adopters or big organizations where they had really complex estates that are now doing DevOps really well?
It's a good question. I mean, I think there's many examples of it. I mean, technology organizations naturally want to learn. I mean, it's I certainly remember reading about the HP's journey, certainly around printers. That development life cycle of having multiple printers, multiple products, multiple drivers, multiple operating systems, and how do you test those? And unfortunately I can't remember the guy's name, but decided to hang on, let's back this out. What we need is one common universal driver, something that we can package once and release, so we don't have all these multiple things, and we can test it all as one unit. I think that it took them 2 or 3 years to do so, but certainly that change meant that it was possible to add features to support, to test, and to release rapidly the enhancements, and thus new products as well. So the printing technology could improve at the rate at which it could be built. Yeah, absolutely. What is this sort of sales pitch we're doing here? Maybe should have asked you this question a little bit earlier, to be honest. But we're building an understanding of what DevOps is, and some of it is kind of obvious and becomes clear as to why you would take a DevOps approach. But what are the things it enables you to do or empowers you to do as an organization that maybe more traditional, should I say, approaches don't? Yeah. For me, the biggest value in DevOps is that you could deliver value to your client more quickly. Yeah. Not just more quickly, but with more stability, with more scalability, and more feature rich. Yeah. Okay. And I think that's key. I mean, certainly, people always. It's very common to think that tech startups are going to do this stuff really well because they're unencumbered by regulation, governance, rules, process, policies, turf wars, all those and the history of a complex estate that's evolved over many years. Exactly that, and that is somewhat true. Yeah. But as you scale up, those things actually add value as well, and it goes to mindset and culture. Is how you adopt those. But if your key business principle is that you're there to deliver great products, cost effectively, and you want to compete, because if someone is going to challenge you at some point, and usually very, very quickly, your ability to go from product idea to released item needs to be as short as possible, and it can be small things. We've been working for our global telecoms provider. I mean, there was an engineering team that were brilliant, great thinkers, but they had to go through really complex change approval processes. It would take several weeks. The release would be 2 to 3 hours. It would go around 4 global regions. It would take somebody half a day to do. Yeah. So and the architect there wanted to get access to some of the data that we were looking after. We had an API that could do some of it, and but it needed more fields, and it needed different filtering, and it only got 2 days to get the work done. Could we give them a dump of our database? So we can do better than that. Let's have a look at the requirement here. So we looked at the product, we looked at the API, we said, right, we can add these fields, we can add this response for you, and we're good to go. 45 minutes later, it was in production. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. So, and that included the review of the requirements, sign off with the product owner, series of unit tests, series of load tests, everything going through the CD pipeline, and then the automated deployment, picking that up, and deploying out to all our regions, all in 45 minutes. What was the number we used to throw around at one point in terms of releases in a day? What did that get to? Well, that was interesting. Yeah, so I think we were proud. What was it, 20 releases a day?
Exactly, to the production environment.
Yeah.
I also got another anecdote of where we were in a meeting not that long ago, actually, and you were approving a release, sat in a room. It just seemed so like such a I guess that's DevOps, if you know what I mean. You were still there as some sort of approval step, but you were able to. You mentioned to me, I've just approved 7 releases during the course of this sort of afternoon that we spent together.
Well, absolutely. There's never, yeah. One of the things that's very important at Headforwards, and I think the leadership here has always really hammered home, is that it's never about one person. It's always about the team, and that's key, because you build those trust relationships with people, and you know how to deliver value. You know where risks are acceptable. So being a gate to delivery is never a good thing. But what it also can do, if when you're a group of people, if you're doing normal cabs, and it's important to have some form of audit to say, yes, I've looked at the requirement, I've understood what's being developed, I know how it's been delivered, I trust everything else in our pipeline is looking good. I can certainly add a tick in the box so that everybody is happy with the process. And it should be that simple. It goes lean and limiting work in progress. Working in small increments is really important. So you can do things like that. Those changes were tiny changes, but they're always out. They're always there and available. And some of it's new code as well. I mean, we talked about value streams and making sure that we're delivering. We talk about sign off and features and acceptance. Developing strategies that allow you to always you don't work off feature branches. All your code's in the master, so you want to release that straight out. So developing systems that allow you to feature toggle and canary release functionality or capabilities is really important, so that you could be dev done. You can have code and features in production that aren't available to clients, but then you can make them available to a specific user or a specific customer, so you get that early feedback. You can also have additional checks and balances and adoption within the business, and that's really powerful. Canary releasing, I think I know certainly Azure and Microsoft do a lot of that. We participated in some of the canary releases for the Cosmos databases that they were working on, and it's very very powerful.
Absolutely. It's something that we're pushing a lot in the team I'm involved with at the moment, actually, and we're getting there with it now, which is dev done, and but either customer isn't quite ready to start using the feature yet, or this can't be used without the following features that are coming behind it that aren't quite there yet. But the concept of being able to push stuff into your live environments to keep those releases small, even if they are toggled off or only enabled for certain users in the business, is it's something we're trying to aim for at the moment.
That sort of leads naturally onto discussions around architecture, both in terms of infrastructure, but also of code as well. So everybody talks about containerization, microservices, nano services, serverless functions. What's important from an architecture perspective is that you have loose coupling between services that are offered. So you'd have something that just drives payments, something that just drives product listings, something that drives the sales process, something that drives your I'm trying to think of on commerce sites, for example. You might have a product of the week type scenario, but all those are loosely coupled services that can operate on their own, and that making sure you don't build those dependencies is really difficult. It's a change in mindset of the developers as well. I mean, you talked about adoption of agile principles. If you've got a massive monolith, how you break that down is not just a development problem. It's very much engineering as well as operations. Yeah. So when thinking about your DevOps journey, it's always worth looking at your enterprise architecture and certainly the solution architecture that goes around that.
Yeah.
Certainly in traditional IT estates, you're administering a large number of platforms, and these platforms need to integrate. Data exchanges between them. It should be automated and repeatable and secure and safe, and all those other things. And you may have multiple dependencies within that. So trying to decouple those dependencies, and there are several solution architectures that will allow you to support that. I mean, I've been really interested in the data mesh concepts recently, where you actually delegate or give autonomy to teams that are domain experts in their data to make that data available to you. But it's done with governance, so that the interfaces that allow you to interact with that data is common. Between different groups, so anybody in the organization can self-serve and access that data, again within roles.
Sure. Yeah.
So you have that. But certainly with those IT platforms, it may be an HR system. It talks to a finance system because they need to, which talks to your identity management platform. Making sure that you can decouple those dependencies. Using sort of think about hub and spoke architectures, thinking about consumers and brokers that sit between those, which will to form a generalization of the data, so that you're not tightly tied into one system's API. You abstract that out into a common data format, which can be put onto a message bus and consumed by the systems that need that information. It also gives you flexibility then as well, because if you want to rip out your identity management platform or your HR system or any one of the many systems that you might be running as an IT operations organization, you can do so without impact. You can focus on what the core value is of what you want to do. So you might want to swap out your system for managing employees' expenses. If you've got 500 employees and you're a remote organization, that's potentially going to be quite substantial. So you want to offer as an IT department, you want to offer a good product. You want to support finance, because finance are actually the service owners in this case. But the elements that you have to think about in terms of data interchanges and security, your coupling is important at that point.
Yeah. What does we've talked obviously quite a lot about like what good DevOps looks like and why. Do you have a what's like anti-DevOps look like? So what's the the evil twin to DevOps? What's anti-DevOps look like?
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I'd always felt that anti-DevOps was anything that added gates to prevent teams from delivering value quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, sure.
So I'd always thought some of the traditional change processes that required. It is one of the things that always makes me chuckle. I'll chuckle or I'd say tear my hair out. But I think lost that one a long time ago. Was people define change authorization boards, and it's not. If you actually read the definition, it's change advisory, and just that change in language. We talk. I'm sure we'll talk books at some point, but leadership is language, and actually that small change in the language changes the mindset as to what you need to do to be confident in releasing something. So you can advise, you can have standard changes, and those changes, the board, you form those boards almost automatically. If it's a standard change, you trust the change process, the release, the testing, and that's you don't need to have a group of people that meet once every 2 weeks who have no concept of what it is you're actually doing. I think one of the clients we worked with would you'd build up this massive amount of changes, and you had to go to a change board for judgment on your release. Just that term judgment easily fills everybody with fear. And again, that leads to culture. If you think about the pathology, you use the phrase pathological organisations, where everything is fear driven, and a mistake results in buration, if that's the right word to use, and bureaucratic organisations, they're very anti-DevOps, where you have to have departments, and you have to have teams, and they all have to be involved, and they all have to be involved when they're able to be involved, because they have, they all have commitments. I mean, that's very, very anti-DevOps. I think if you there's some great literature and books out that you can read, and I'm a massive fan of Gene Kim. And if you read the DevOps handbook, one of the first paragraphs talks about the shape of people in technology teams. Either I-shaped people who have immense expertise in one domain, or T-shaped people that have a lot of good knowledge but are expert in one domain, which is onto E-shaped people almost. You have just people who want to achieve a shared goal, and are happy to look in, become experts in different areas, or have a lot of experience in different areas, whether that be security practices, security design, cloud adoption, changing those processes, business change. I mean, we talk about DevOps purely as a technical thing, but actually, the business culture changed as well. I was thinking on the way over, actually, one of the almost best examples, I think, of change adoption with minimal effort, the self-service tills in supermarkets.
Right. Yeah.
If you think about the change that brings in, I mean, you never sit there and read a manual. You don't sit there and read a change log every time you go, and things update. And the frequency of the interface updates and changes, they're just usable.
That's great.
Although it's well tested and well controlled, you can't train everybody to do that. So right at the start of my career there, I developed a product. I developed a product from a very technical perspective. It was a biometric membership system with I was more into the tech at the time. I was very into the the distributed computing of it, so the extraction and matching of prints to identify records within a database, but have that available over sort of multiple geographies was I love the tech for it. But I was a UI designer, and we're taking it to we're looking to collaborate with a business, and I got some time with the owner of an organisation that had worked with optics, and it was interesting because it's very highly regulated. So using technology in a change in technology in a regulated industry is always going to be complicated. And he said to me, Chris, everything needs to be obvious to the user. You need to take them on a journey. So what we have here is you've got all the exciting technical stuff all in one place. So you've got this dashboard, myriad of really interesting things you can do. But actually, what's key is the flow and the simplicity. And to show my age, he talked about how you program video recorders. Trying to that interface, that design needed to be simple. So if the design is simple and the product is good, then adoption, the business change that goes with that follows. I mean, of course, business organisation is more complicated than that. You need teams of people and that will adopt changing working practices, and that should always be taken into account when changing these processes, and it can be the hardest part.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, that is interesting. That's a great analogy as well, actually, and it's a great analogy for, like you say, putting UX in at the forefront of the design there, but also the trust as well. So if you think when you go through, you happily scan your credit card or your card on the machine to pay for what you're checking out for, because you trust that machine's not going to do anything dodgy, possibly with your bank account, or charge you more than what it tells you, or whatever it might be. So the trust is there as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. What does we've talked a little bit about sort of change approval and that kind of stuff. What does documentation look like in DevOps? What's good documentation in DevOps? So I know sometimes there's like have no documentation whatsoever is one view, and then obviously there's a lot of places where it's like the documentation is very heavy but possibly never even read by anybody. Is DevOps somewhere in the middle there, or does it lean one way or the other?
It's documentation is a question I've been asked in in interviews throughout my career, and I've never felt I've given a good answer. And what, everybody's accepted there is no good answer. I think, what does good documentation look like? There is always room for documentation, and it's key, especially in regulated industries. You need to, and certainly if you have accreditation. So you think about the ISO, the ISO standards. So 9001, 27001, several more that I can't remember off the top of my head. SOC 2, for example. You have controls. You have policies and you have controls, and you need to be able to show that you've met those. You're using those controls. Governance and compliance and audit is key. So for me, good documentation in the DevOps environment is written to a specific audience. So it's very easy to try to go from design to implementation to build to run all in one document. If you think as a product manager, describe what it is that you're what it is that you want built. So we might use user stories for that, but that needs to be translated into either a product manual that needs to be translated into an architecture design. It might need to be translated into a technical design. Less is more in documentation as well. I mean, certainly in many of the organisations I've worked with, the technical documentation will live in a Git repository, marked down, and wikis are very very powerful for that. God, I might even say on camera that I might even miss Confluence, no longer having to use it. But actually, the ability to be free flowing and link the sort of the architecture documents, the technical documents to the run, to the service delivery documents. Making sure that teams have access to those and can see the flow of development almost from conceptualization to delivery and to operation. I think that's good. I mean, certainly when you're developing API based products, having sort of open API standard documentation that's there and consumable. I mean, certainly when we're evaluating tools that we might bring into an IT estate, one of the first things there are two things that we always look at. One is identity and access management. Can we do role based permissions, and what does the API look like for the product? Can we control users and groups? The JML process, so those life cycles. Can we access the functionality? Can we put the configuration into our source control system so that everything is repeatable? Those elements are always key. And it's surprising, actually, as you could go further and further up the stack to sort of the enterprise platforms, thinking about the Salesforce and ServiceNow and there's SAP products, how wonderfully advanced those can be. All very different, they're slightly different mindsets, and you see that the sort of almost a generational development in those at times. But so good documentation and for developers and for service delivery is important too. One of the things that must have frustrated you a lot when we were working on the cloud management platform for the global telecoms provider was actually we were still on our journey. DevOps for us was very new as a team. We were a very new team, and we were really pushing the boat out. It was great with the greenfield side. It's so much easier, but even starting with something as simple as blue-green delivery that allowed us to develop the code and push out microservices that were down to a specific area in that process. We got we could respond quickly to problems. We could develop features and deliver them fast, but we weren't good at operating that as a platform. We couldn't give you the information fast enough, almost about what the capabilities were and how to use them, how to sell them, for want of a better term, within the organisation themselves. Adopting the features that we're delivering. If you deliver them rapidly, the organisation needs to be able to consume them rapidly as well. even things as simple as customer onboarding, that process can be incredibly complex, especially in regulated industries, where it is very much a partnership. You have responsibilities, and the client has responsibilities to regulators that they must do certain things in a certain way in a certain time frame. The documentation of those operational policies, it can grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I remember the first time I worked on implementing 27001, and we had a auditor in, a consultant in to help us through it, and she said the key thing is that if you want your policy documents to be alive and in use, they need to be short, they need to be concise. Don't be overburdening with them. Think about what it is you're trying to achieve, write it cleanly, and make sure it lives. Make sure it's used.
Just going back to that bit you mentioned around user adoption is an interesting one as well, isn't it? Because again, the culture mentality sort of reset or set for a DevOps approach goes all the way to your end users in that respect, because some users might be, if you can just picture someone in a large organization where they're completely stacked out with their day job and they're using a bunch of different tools and technologies and just need them to work. What's preferable to the user at that point, that they get, they know that they're getting one big product update, a year with lots of change, versus the product constantly evolving in a small way, but underneath them. And so, there's a lot of those big products now, and even tools that we work with, that have evergreen approach, where they, you almost don't really have a say in what's coming down, or whether you can sort of preview it or not. And a lot of times they're just constantly pushing change down, which is great, but also can cause those moments where it's like, oh, hang on.
I think one of the prime examples for me of difficult change is the Outlook interface on a Mac. For the desktop application, the number of times I can't find a button. It's moved.
Exactly.
It's small changes. It's unlearning. I think one of the great workshops actually that we got to attend at Agile on the beach. I never get her name right. She kindly says that no, people can't. But Jessie Sternshish. If you went to either the keynote or the workshop, but the ability to unlearn, just one small change in a process or a system, and then either reimagining the solution or just realizing that you don't need to know that anymore. I always felt for some of the sort of sysadmin teams that would say, well, but I've got to do this. Why have you got to do that? Well, because it's what we've always done. Okay, but what if we just don't do that anymore? What would it look like if we didn't do that? Well, we could do it this way, or as we don't need to do that, we can work with one of the developers to to change the code so that we don't have to run these database scripts and then take that one down and restart it and make sure that the replication is good over here. If they can just change that, that's one thing. But once you open that door, they snowball. Once you start those lines of communication and those conversations, again, it goes to trust. I guess. Absolutely. I guess that's the thing, isn't it? When you come down to these approaches and you're starting to automate huge parts of your pipeline, it doesn't mean that the people maybe who had roles previously in those kind of control gates that you might have had, it's not there to kind of replace them as a person in the organization. It allows you to point them at more exciting, interesting, and useful stuff, probably, if you know what I mean. So rather than having to be this control gate approving stuff, I can go and work with the development teams and catch things that maybe I might have blocked out as a control gate before, but as part of a design process with the teams, probably much more. Very, very much so. I think the roles all still very, very much exist. It's just how they're done is that changes. And certainly in development teams as well. And if you think about the very old patterns, a developer would do something, say, right, step down, it all works, chucks it over the walls, the QA comes along and tries it, and then it doesn't work, and it's either a misinterpretation of a requirement or use of a piece of functionality that was never expected to be used like that, so therefore it doesn't work, and then it goes back into, that you if you draw a time graph about sort of the work happening and then being put down and passed back, you've got all those little pieces that don't happen. So the role of testing changes. You can run it continuously. You're offering a service to a developer that can say, right, I've got these tests. I've written these use cases. I've done them in a way which means you can execute them as tests. Do that. That's going to help you. You're actually writing the test before your development. We won't get into TDD right now. That's a completely different conversation. But so the way that you do testing isn't manual. It's automated. It takes a unit. The same for security. The same principles apply to that. And those roles, those change. Infrastructure as code. It's not a new thing now, but for somebody to actually have to define the infrastructure as code and not go and do the simple thing of clicking a button in a UI to make a change happen. It is a big change, and you need to, it's an iterative process to develop tools that allow you to do that. And you can take a big off-the-shelf tool to do it, or actually just write a script that does what you need to do in the smallest possible paradigm. I mean, we rather than terraforming a massive amount of Azure infrastructure, what we cared about in particular, maybe on our application gateway, was routing. So the ability to create a YAML file that defined each of the routes, or defined the roles or the users that had access to those endpoints for a period of time, which actually turned out to be well over a year. That was more than enough. So one file with a script that could run as an action that would go and make those changes for us. And of course, all those are audited, so the changes are controlled and audited. The Azure platform would keep a log of all the changes, and as well to the object on the platform. But so that's it just changes the way that the engineers are thinking about the problems they're solving.
Exactly.
And the opportunity to learn something new. I mean, it's great. It's great to see, and it's working with a new team at the moment. One wonderful team. Really passionate and focused, and understand what it is that they want to be able to deliver to add value to the organisation. And to see the skills, to see everybody naturally pushing themselves, going, oh, we hadn't thought about trying something that way, and if we did that, then we like that, but that pattern, it's going to save time, it's going to be more accurate, the consistency will be better. It enables us to make to push decisions further down the road that we don't need to make now. So we've got more flexibility further on.
Right. Okay, fantastic. I think we've covered most of the points I wanted to cover there, actually. So closing tradition on the podcast, Chris, as I have prepped you for, is drink of your choice, which, I mean, you said beer's fine.
Indeed.
You might recognise this one, because I'm afraid it's not this year's Headforwards beer. I think they all got drunk at Agile on the Beach.
I was going to say the other Headforwards tradition.
Yes, exactly. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
So last question is usually, and you've mentioned it a few times actually today already, which is any reading, books, blogs, podcasts. You've mentioned Agile on the Beach. Give us some of your favourite ones, especially on DevOps.
I'm a big fan of Gene Kim and Jez Humble. I mean, very much evangelists of the DevOps movement. Great writers, really engaging. Work with a wonderful group of people as well. I mean, I'm a big fan of Nicole Forsgren, who looks very much at the science and the psychology behind DevOps and engineering teams. But one of my favourite recommended reads is the Phoenix Project.
Okay, remember.
And then the follow up there, the Unicorn Project as well. I mean, it's impossible not to read that book and feel very emotional actually, and reflect upon your career and thinking, my God, we're doing that, or my God, we've done that, or my God, we're about to do that. even worse. Remember being recommended the book, and again, it is actually looks at technology within a traditional engineering organization. So the adoption and change there. How you support the business, how you add value, how you empower people, your organizational structure, calling out the superheroes and the evangelists and the middle managers and the processes and going through that change. It all in a novel, in a tech novel. So it's not quite Dan Brown, but I certainly found it a gripping read, and I've recommended it to many people, and they've all come back and said, "Oh my god, we did that, didn't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we did that. We did that."
I remember you mentioned that before. I will check that one out, I think. But yes, it's been great to have you on, Chris. Thank you very much again, and hopefully see you again around the Headforwards buildings.
Thank you for letting me back in.
we let you back in, exactly. Nice one. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.